Welcome, everybody, to the Let's Be Real Here podcast. I am your host, Rory Wicks, your resident, highly opinionated, agender commentator on everything from politics to recent events affecting us all. But in the heat of this life-changing election, we're going to talk about climate change. But more specifically, we're going to talk about the Green New Deal. There's a lot of information being spread around about it, and it's frankly just incorrect. Is this deal perfect? I don't know. But it's a step in the right direction, and I want to tell you why. Let's get to it. All right. And as usual, please like, subscribe, share, or whatever on wherever media you're listening to. It helps the podcast grow, so if you like what you hear, please help me out. And don't forget to throw me a like on Facebook at facebook.com/Let's Be Real Here podcast, and on Twitter at Be Real Here Pod, or for my personal Twitter at AgenderBlogger. But today's topic is the Green New Deal. I'm sure you've heard about it. Both Trump and Pence claim that Biden is a supporter of the Green New Deal during their debates, even though Biden is not. He has his own plan that he's just calling the Biden plan in the debate. It's a very original name that I'm sure took his interns hours to think of. But more importantly, they're saying that he supports it because it rallies his base. This is something that AOC helped author, and as I'm sure you know, his supporters are not fans of her. And Trump likes to take shots at her and the squad at every opportunity that he gets, because it gets a reaction. They love the lock her up and send her back chants. I did take a look at the Biden plan for climate change, and I'm not saying that this plan is the same as the Green New Deal, but it does reference the Green New Deal as ideal framework. And they do say, and I quote, "As president, Biden will lead the world and address the climate emergency and lead through the power of example, by ensuring the U.S. achieves a 100% clean energy economy and net zero emissions no later than 2050. In the 2050 bit, that's just the general consensus among scientists, and it's exactly what the Green New Deal states. But really, it's just a watered-down version of the Green New Deal. It takes parts of it and just doesn't acknowledge others. Believe it or not, the Green New Deal is a good thing. It's not a communist plot to take away your cows, no matter what Trump says. So you can hold on tight to your precious beef. It's not going anywhere. According to a New York Times article, the Green New Deal is a congressional resolution that lays out a grand plan for tackling climate change. But let's pause real quick right here. What the fuck is a congressional resolution? Well, the general rule, to which there are exceptions, is that a bill is proposed to be a law, while a resolution usually relates to administrative matters within the legislature or purely honorary matters. There are, however, different types of resolutions, such as a joint resolution, concurrent resolution, or simple resolution. And sometimes some of these may also have force of law. For instance, in the U.S. Congress, a joint resolution is equivalent to a bill in that it can propose legislation. This resolution was introduced by Representative AOC, and yes, I'm just saying AOC because I'm afraid of butchering her last name, of New York, and Senator Edward J. Markey of Massachusetts. The proposal calls on the federal government to wean the United States from fossil fuels and curb planet-warming greenhouse gas emissions across the economy. It also aims to guarantee new high-paying jobs in clean energy industries. The resolution is non-binding, so even if Congress approves it, nothing in the proposal would become law. It's more like a goal, or a direction that we will be moving and taking actions to do. At least that's how I interpret this. Believe it or not, but among think tanks, the Green Party, and many others, a variation of the Green New Deal has been around for a long time. After the 2018 midterm elections, a youth activist group called Sunrise Movement popularized the name by laying out a strategy and holding a sit-in outside the office of Nancy Pelosi, the soon-to-be Speaker of the House of Representatives. And this was to demand action on climate change. AOC joined the protesters, lending her support to their proposal and setting the groundwork for what ultimately became the joint resolution. The goal of the Green New Deal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in order to avoid the worst consequences of climate change while also trying to fix societal problems like economic inequality and racial injustice. What I would like to do is break down some of the pieces of the Green New Deal in regards to the climate change and just kind of talk about it a little bit. Let's start with renewable energy. In the Green New Deal, it says they want to meet 100% of the power demand in the United States through clean, renewable, and zero-emission energy sources. Right now, renewable energy accounts for 20% of the U.S. energy production. That's not bad, but we can do better. Renewable energy is a good thing. I find it hard for anyone to be against the idea of using renewable energies, but I guess just in case, here are some basic examples of using renewable energy. Renewable energy won't run out because it's the wind and the sun and not oil. Renewable energy saves money. Not only will you save on maintenance costs, but on operating costs as well. When you're using a technology that generates power from the sun, wind, steam, or natural process, you don't have to pay to refuel. The amount of money you will save using renewable energy can depend on a number of factors, including the technology itself. But in most cases, transitioning to renewable energy means anywhere from hundreds to thousands of dollars in savings. You might have a higher upfront cost, but at the end of the day, you're going to save a ton of money. Renewables lower our reliance on foreign energies. With renewable energy technologies, you can produce energy locally. The more renewable energy you're using for your power needs, the less you'll rely on imported energy, and the more you'll contribute to the U.S. energy independence as a whole. And personally, I think this is one of the easier bits of the Green New Deal because it's smart. Why continue to use something that we are running out of when we can create the same, if not better, type of energy that literally won't run out? No other advantage should even matter. That's the one. The EU currently has the same goal. The Biden plan currently has the same goal. This is the kind of system that can lead to us being more self-sustaining. We aren't going to run out of wind, and unless the sun explodes, which would be a different problem, we aren't going to run out of sunlight. It's practical. It makes sense. The reason the right holds on so tight to oil is the sheer amount of money that lines their pockets. It's a $5.4 trillion industry that spends a fortune on lobbying and political endeavors, so of course they don't want it. This would put them out of business. But I challenge them. What if they used some of those trillions of dollars that, instead of lining their pockets, they opened up R&D that could move them into greener energies, help with the weaning out of fossil fuels by you yourself doing the same, for the good of the planet. You can work with the government, use capitalism, don't fight against our future. We could be a leader in the renewable energy market. In fact, that's something that the Biden plan wants to do that the Green New Deal doesn't specifically say that they want. They don't specifically say they want to be a leader in the market. But Biden does, and we could, easily. If there's one thing that this country is good at, it's inventing and harvesting technology. We just need the oil tycoons to either get on board or we need to shut them down. The Green New Deal also talks about energy efficiency. It says, upgrading all existing buildings in the United States and building new buildings to achieve maximal energy efficiency, water efficiency, safety, affordability, comfort, and durability, including through electrification. This is obviously a long-term plan. Replacing or upgrading all the buildings in the country isn't going to happen anytime soon, and realistically won't even happen in the next 10 years. But think of the jobs that this would create. The energy business would explode from the amount of work that they would have. On the flip side, yeah, the cost is going to be astronomical. So there would have to be a serious plan in place if you ever want to get Republicans to sign off on something like this. And they would have to see the financial advantage because, as we know, that's the bottom line for them. They don't care about fixing the environment. And for as long as the Republicans are around, that's what they're going to talk about. So going back to my previous point, if the fossil fuel companies start putting money in these systems, helping turn buildings over to solar powered by investing in the research or the materials, they could lead the charge and cement their spot in the future or die when we inevitably win, because this is the logical next step. So I guess grow or die. On transportation, the Green New Deal wants to overhaul transportation systems in the United States to eliminate pollution and greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sectors as much as is technologically feasible, including through investment in zero-emission vehicle infrastructure and manufacturing clean, affordable, and accessible public transportation and high-speed rail. According to a CNN article, there are models to encourage low-emission vehicles that the current government is abandoning. Some federal tax incentives for people buying electric vehicles are running out, Tesla, and haven't been renewed. Others, like increased emissions standards, have been jeopardized by the Trump administration. Relatively cheap gas in recent years also hasn't helped Americans move toward better fuel efficiency. But encouraging people with a tax incentive is different from overhauling transportation systems, and that's just hard. Just days after the Green New Deal was introduced, California's new governor, Gavin Newsom, a Democrat and progressive, nixed his state's plan at a high-speed rail from LA to San Francisco to instead focus on smaller Central Valley communities. One reason Newsom said he didn't end the program altogether was because he didn't want the state to have to return a $3.5 billion federal loan. But I think this is doable. Yeah, it's going to be hard to overhaul this whole system, but here's the thing. The greatest things that we've ever done are hard. And honestly, electric cars kind of rock. And we can find a way, if it becomes a big deal, we can find a way to let the gearheads all still get their jollies off with their hand on the clutch. So much of this is going to be about finding compromises early on. And this is one of the things that we will have to think about, as silly as it may seem. But we can find a way around it. We have put people on the moon. We can find a way to let people go zoom, zoom real fast for fun. It is not in any way, like all of this, it is not in any way like what Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas has said. He told Hugh Hewitt that the proposal would confiscate cars and require Americans to, quote, ride around on high-speed light rail supposedly powered by unicorn tears, end quote. Well, unicorn tears can't power cars, you idiot. It's the blood you want, and only because it helps sustain life. God. We're a country that loves cars and travel. So this is a place where I think we could be a serious innovator. Instead of shitting on it, we should market it as the next step, the next industrial revolution, or something. I don't know. People like it when you use old words to talk about new things. But it's not that hard to spin. This is good for the country. New things, new ideas, these create more jobs. More jobs is good for the economy. We just need to get these rich assholes to stop thinking with their wallets and start thinking with their head. I know it won't happen, but I'm going to keep on dreaming anyway. The Green New Deal wants to include low-tech solutions. It says, removing greenhouse gases from the atmosphere and reducing pollution, including by restoring natural ecosystems through proven low-tech solutions that increase soil carbon storage, such as preservation and afforestation. Pretty much, we want to plant more trees. The U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Forest Service have a complicated cost estimate for afforestation in every county in the U.S., and another way is that the protection and rehabilitation of wetlands to guard against the effects of climate change. Turns out, trees are good, actually. Now, I referenced this earlier, but it's true. One of the, new talking points amongst some of the Republicans is that the Green New Deal is going to take away your cows. Senator John Barrasso, Republican of Wyoming and chairman to the Committee on Environment and Public Works, warned that ice cream, cheeseburgers, and milkshakes would be a thing of the past under the Green New Deal. Quote, livestock would be banned, end quote. Well, this is flatly not true. According to New York Times, the resolution does call on the federal government to make investments in policies and projects that would eventually change the way we design buildings, travel, and eat. For example, cows. To reduce methane, a powerful greenhouse gas that cows and other livestock emit, the resolution proposes, quote, working collaboratively with farmers and ranchers in the United States to eliminate pollution and greenhouse gas emissions for the agricultural sector as much as technologically feasible, end quote. They want to invest in sustainable farming and land use practices that increase soil health by building a more sustainable food system that ensures universal access to healthy food. They don't want to take away your cows, okay? They want to find a way to reduce the amount of methane that cows and other livestock produce. How? Fuck if I know. That's why they want to work with farmers and scientists to do this. Just like the left doesn't want to take away your guns, they aren't going to take away your cows either. So you can go ahead and pull the beef out of your freezer. You don't need to hoard it from the radical left. From here, the Green New Deal dives into things that aren't directly the environment or climate change, but rather about our system as a whole. It goes on to talk about giving a living wage to all families, strengthening labor laws, giving public ownership to all of these changes, which scares the shit out of the right, but they also want to provide higher education, strengthen trade unions and trade deals, protect the rights of indigenous people in healthcare. It says things like, quote, providing all people of the United States with high-quality healthcare, affordable, safe, and adequate housing, economic security, and access to clean water, clean air, healthy and affordable food and nature. Guaranteeing a job with a family-sustaining wage, adequate family and medical leave, paid vacations, and retirement security for all people of the United States. Providing resources, training, and high-quality education, including higher education, to all people of the United States, with a focus on frontline and vulnerable communities, so those communities may be full and equal participants in the Green New Deal mobilization, and a lot more. And as much as I do want to dive into these topics, they aren't the part that I want to focus on, which is climate change. The Green New Deal is posted online, so please, by all means, read it yourself. But essentially, these are similar to what a lot of Democrats are talking about right now. One thing that people need to get past is the idea that if we pass this resolution, that this is all going to take place immediately and that we're going to go bankrupt. The goal would be to follow the science and be carbon-free by 2050. Because regardless of what King Trump says, climate change is real. We have to deal with it. According to an intergovernmental panel on climate change, quote, scientific evidence for warming of the climate system is unequivocal, end quote. NASA.gov says the planet's average surface temperature has increased about 2.05 degrees Fahrenheit since the late 19th century, a change driven largely by increased carbon dioxide and other human-made emissions into the atmosphere. Most of the warming occurred in the past 40 years, and the 6 warmest years on record taking place since 2014. Not only was 2016 the warmest year on record, but 8 months out of that year, from January through September, with the exception of June, were the warmest on record for these respective months. The Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets have decreased en masse. Data from NASA's Gravity Recovery and Climate Experiment show Greenland lost an average of 279 billion tons of ice per year between 1993 and 2019, while Antarctica lost about 148 billion tons of ice per year. Glaciers are retreating almost everywhere in the world, including the Alps, Himalayas, Andes, Rockies, Alaska, and Africa. Satellite observations reveal that the amount of spring snow cover in the northern hemisphere has decreased over the past 5 decades, and the snow is melting earlier. Global sea levels rose about 8 inches in the last century. The rate in the last 2 decades, however, is nearly doubled that of the last century and accelerating slightly every year. And that's just a few of the things that I found. I'm not a scientist, so I don't know, what all of this means. But it sounds bad. And I believe the scientists. This is literally their job. So why would they lie to us about it? It doesn't increase their funding. It doesn't help their cause, other than they want to save our planet and move to healthier and cheaper options for the country, I guess. So, yay, it's a good thing. So why are so many people opposed to climate change? Well, let's talk about the top 5 according to ScienceAlert.com. Number 1 is would-be science denial. Deniers suggest that climate change is just a part of the natural cycle. Climate models are unreliable and too sensitive to carbon dioxide. All of these arguments, according to the website, are false, and there is clear consensus among scientists about the causes of climate change. The climate models that predict global temperature rises have remained very similar over the last 30 years, despite the huge increase in complexity, showing it as a robust outcome of the science, according to ScienceAlert.com. Number 2 is economic denial, the idea that it's too expensive, but there are studies out there that show it would take about 1% of the world's GDP to fix the climate. The reality is that these deniers are just protecting the $5.2 trillion fossil fuel industry. Number 3 is humanitarian denial. Climate change deniers also argue that the climate change is good for us. They suggest longer, warmer summers in the temperate zone will make farming more productive. These gains, however, are often offset by drier summers and increased frequency of heat waves in those same areas. For example, the 2010 Moscow heat wave killed 11,000 people, devastated the Russian wheat harvest, and increased global food prices. More than 40% of the world's population also live in the tropics, where, from both a human health perspective and an increase in desertification, no one wants the summer temperatures to rise. Number 4 is political deniers. These climate change deniers argue that we cannot take action because other countries are not taking action. But not all countries are equally guilty of causing current climate change. For example, 25% of the human-produced CO2 in the atmosphere is generated by the U.S. Another 22% is produced by the EU. Africa produces just under 5%. Given the historic legacy of greenhouse gas pollution, developed countries have an ethical responsibility to lead the way in cutting emissions. But ultimately, all the countries do need to act, because if we want to minimize the effects of climate change, then the world must go carbon zero by 2050. Hey, that sounds familiar. Number 5 is crisis denial. These deniers of climate change argue that we shouldn't rush into changing these things, especially given the uncertainty raised by the other 4 areas of denial above. Deniers argue that climate change is not as bad as scientists make it out to be. We will be much richer in the future and better able to fix climate change. They also play on our emotions, as many of us don't like change and can feel we are living in the best of times, especially if we are rich and powerful. But honestly, these same hollow arguments were used in the past to delay ending slavery, granting the vote to women, ending colonial rule, ending segregation, decriminalizing homosexuality, bolstering workers' rights and environmental regulations, allowing same-sex marriage and banning smoking. So, take it with a grain of salt, because rewashed bullshit that has so far failed at every other time shouldn't be taken seriously. But let me ask you this. Why would you be against this? If it's scientifically proven to benefit you and your legacy, why would you be against this? The Republicans are only arguing against it because they're being asked to by their donors. So why are you? Outside of it being just denial, which is exactly that, it's denial. It's not a fact-based argument, and it's about as scientifically sound as being a flat earther. About 97% of climate experts believe not only that it's real, but humans are a cause of it. So assuming that that's true, if we are the cause or even part of the cause, it's up to us to fix it. Plain and simple. We hire, sponsor, train, and rely on these scientists for so much. Why is it that we don't believe them when it comes to this? Because it's hard to accept? Yeah, it's hard to change. I get that. It is hard, but they're saying if we don't get our shit together by 2050, it's going to get really bad. Food and water will be scarcer. The rains will be heavier. People will flood in from rural areas to the city, expanding the city through the suburbs and beyond. More droughts will happen. The air will be dry and hot, and every breath will be sharp and full of pollution. The forests will be gone, either burned or logged. Portions of the earth, like Africa and eventually western U.S., will be uninhabitable. There are almost constant hurricanes and storms from all the moisture in the air and rising heat of the ocean. The rising water level will make it so that we constantly have to find higher ground, and space will be running out. Or worse. We have one life, remember? So why are we spending it killing each other? The people who want to fight this the most are the ones that only have money to gain. Their current legacy is cemented in the oil they drill. They don't care. They have money, and money is power, and power is safety. If we die to the heat of our sun, they'll laugh in their shaded homes as they sip 30-year-old whiskey, laughing while we burn. We don't need oil. They just want money. The last bit that I want to talk to you about the Green New Deal is this cost. President Trump has claimed that it would cost about $100 trillion. On the flip side, supporters of the Green New Deal say that climate change could equally cost the American economy. And from what I was reading, it would just be death, effectively. It's impossible to kind of pin down what the dollar figures on the plan would be. But Trump also said, and I quote, "It's going to cost more money." He said, "Our country will be a ninth world country, not a third world country, a ninth world country," end quote. Let that sink in for a second. Yeah, he's an idiot. One of the closest examples that we have to base off of right now is Vermont, which has a goal of achieving 90% renewable energy by mid-century. The cost is estimated at $33 billion. Yet the state is already seeing job growth in the clean energy sectors and expects the transition will mean cost savings for consumers. Modernizing the electrical grid across the United States could cost as much as $476 billion, yet reap $2 trillion in benefits, according to a 2011 study issued by the Electric Power Research Institute. AOC has acknowledged that the Green New Deal is going to be expensive, but contends that the plan will pay for itself through economic growth. And I agree, it will be expensive, but I also think it'll be worth it. We'll gain more jobs, and we'll give this planet a fighting chance to go even further. And if I didn't convince you, know that it wasn't my goal. I'm not trying to convince you here. If you don't believe that climate change is real or you think it's a hoax, you're an idiot and you're wrong. Sorry, not sorry. Until next time, this is Rory Wicks, and I'll talk to you soon.